All right, welcome back, New York Ranger fans and Ottawa Senator fans. We got a very special crossover edition for you guys here today. This is John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, joined by Ross Levitan and Brandon Pillar of Locked On Ottawa Senators. Fellas, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, we're doing all right. We just saw a 2-1 loss. If you're an Ottawa Senators fan, listen to this. But, hey, credit to the Rangers. They came to play tonight. Their power play clicked. That was the game winner. And, hey, it was an entertaining, hard-fought game, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it was just definitely kind of like a grinded out kind of a game here tonight. And I think one thing that was kind of encouraging, I know the Senators got off to a 1-0 lead in this game. They scored an early goal, Tim Stutzle with the snipe there. But the Rangers have really been struggling out of the starting blocks recently. And so to me, it was nice to see them just play a strong first period for a change. That was pretty nice. And, ultimately get the game tied there before the first intermission there.
Yeah, and it was a good game, like back and forth, like a lot of momentum changes. I thought the Sens did a really good job of playing a hard-working game. They checked hard on the Rangers' forecheckers. They didn't give them too many opportunities, even strength. And when they did, Filip Gustavsson, Sens goaltender, it was his first game back in quite some time to the NHL, and I thought he stood tall, especially. Look, we love Zibanejad, but the last thing we want to see him do is score on the Sens, especially at home.
He's done that enough.
Yeah, we're still a little bitter about that trade, if you can't tell, John. But he was able to stop Zibanejad on a couple one-timers and really played a solid game. It's just when you're up against Igor Shesterkin, likely you're going to lose that goaltender duel.
Yeah, and John, maybe less interesting if you're a Rangers fan, but for us, it's kind of funny to hear Filip Gustavsson stops Mika Zibanejad because he was the return when we traded Derick Brassard. Well, obviously we got him from the Rangers, then we flipped him to Pittsburgh, and Gustavsson 4 years ago was that guy. So he's kind of dubbed the goalie of the future in Ottawa. He started this year great, won 2 of his first 3 starts, but then he's only got 1 win since, John, and that's in a span of 9 games. So it was nice to see him play well, at least tonight. Sorry, 10 games if we're adding tonight, but still just a 1 win during that span. And that was the Sens' only win in November, in 11 games in November. That was a tough stretch there. But, hey, there were a lot of building blocks. If you're a Senators fan in this one, you can say, hey, that's a team that we think could make a run this year. If you're looking from the outside in on the New York Rangers, I thought they stood with them each way. And we're not using injuries as an excuse, but you look at the power play that the Sens got towards the end of the game. That's where a good team gives up a power play goal and then they get one back, and then you'd be battling it out that way. Ottawa's second power play unit, I bet you if I named all 5 guys, your listeners would know like maybe one of them. These are guys who probably shouldn't be on NHL power play units. The Sens are without their number 1 defenseman, their number 1 center, their top goal scorer and top point scorer, Derick Brassard, Josh Norris, Thomas Chabot, and then their starting goalie now, Matt Murray, which doesn't do anything on the power play. But without those guys, everyone else has to move up a notch. And yeah, their first power play unit's still okay, but once they don't score in the first minute, you can pretty much kiss the other half of the power play goodbye in that one. So it's unfortunate, but again, no excuses. The Rangers got it done when it mattered, and Panarin's goal to win it was an absolute rocket. Like I don't think there's many goalies in the league that are going to stop that one.
Yeah, you touched on the Zibanejad trade, a couple minutes ago there, and not to rub salt in the wound or anything like that, but I'm just curious, like when that trade was initially made, and it was Zibanejad for Brassard straight up.
And we gave up a second.
Yeah, there was a pick in there. Yeah,
You know why? That's so that the Rangers would pay Brassard's signing bonus.
There it is. But yeah, I mean, looking back at it, when the Raiders first did it, it was one of those moves where I didn't love it. I was a huge Derick Brassard fan. I mean, he was my favorite player on the team. He was a big part of the reason why they made it to the finals back in 2014. But it's one of those trades, even though I didn't love it, I definitely understood it because, Mika Zibanejad's 23 at the time. I think he was a top 5 draft pick back in the day. And obviously there's tremendous upside there. But what about your perspective? Like, were you guys like, oh God, why are we doing this? Or did the trade make sense at the time at least? I mean, just kind of give me a feel for that if you can.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm sure Pillsy will build off of this, but he was inconsistent with Ottawa, but you could see the talent. You could see the physical maturity of him, even at a young age. He came in and had his 9 games, where you don't burn a year. And then he went back over and played in Djurgården to finish up his Swedish career. And then when he came back, he was just like, some nights he was unbelievable. It was an all-Swedish line with Daniel Alfredsson and Jacob Silfverberg in that shortened 2012-2013 season. And he ends up scoring a big goal in the playoffs that year. Ottawa beat Montreal. And you're like, okay, I can see them building around this guy a little bit more. And then the next year, Jason Spezza gets dealt at the trade deadline. In the offseason. So then he's the number one center on this team. And it was a lot of pressure, I think, at a young age for him at 22 years old to be all that. And Kyle Turris was kind of a 1A, 1B type guy, never really the guy. So I think they wanted to get someone who's a little more proven in the playoffs. And I think that when you're looking at something that Dorion targets time and time again, and Pillsy can speak to this, they love hometown talent. And Derick Brassard's an Ottawa guy, and I don't think they could resist that. Now, right after the trade was made, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, okay, I know Mika needs a new contract after next year. Maybe they don't want to pay it, right? Carlson needs his money too. And then all of a sudden, the next year, Brassard goes out and gets like 40-some points. He was a real good player in his first year with Ottawa. And then they beat the Rangers in the playoffs, and Brassard outplayed Zibanejad that first year. So you're feeling good? And then since then, it's been a complete one-sided trade, no doubt. Now, I thought Ottawa was actually good in recouping the value they did for Derick Brassard when they did. They got not only Gustafsson, who was a second-round pick, but they got a first-round pick in that trade as well, and Ian Cole, which they flipped to a third right away. So a first, a third, and a goalie prospect. I thought they did all right. Clearly, Brassard's values dipped tremendously since that point. So I thought they recouped a bit, but of course, Zibanejad, man, he's a premier player in the NHL.
Absolutely. And, I figure we'll keep talking about the Rangers and the Senators. We'll break down this game in just a second. But first, let's let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Ottawa Senators is brought to you by Built Bar. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, Puffs included, 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKS15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKS15 for 15% off at built.com. And fellas, while we're on the subject, do you guys have a favorite Built Bar flavor?
Oh man, I have so many favorite Built Bar flavors. Definitely. I think anything with coconut, I think they really do really well. Like the coconut brownie chunk,
Yes.
which was a limited time one. I think that's one of the greatest flavors of all time. Like getting real brownie chunks on a protein bar and still being healthy. Like you said, I don't know how they do it, but it's delicious.
I'm a salted caramel guy, but John, we
yeah.
always recommend our listeners to get the milk mix box of Built Bars, because why wouldn't you
Yes.
just try them all and then decide which one you want as your favorite Built Bar? What about you? What's your go-to, John?
I mean, lately, anything with brownie, first of all, but I got a box of coconut brownie right over there. So,
Yes.
they're really good, man. And, I don't know how long they're going to be around, so stock up on them right now if you can. But,
For sure.
I figure we'll turn our attention back to hockey here. The Senators, something that I heard the MSG broadcast mention, they're playing their 6th game in their last 9 days. Obviously, some makeup games in there. But, I mean, how are they holding up? I mean, do you guys almost have to, grade them on a little bit of a curve, given that, I mean, that's a grind, man. 6 games in 9 days.
How about the podcast?
Yeah.
That's gritty for us. We do a postcast after each and every game on our YouTube page. And then obviously, just like Locked On Ranger, you can find us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. But no, it's fair enough. And Pillsy, you take this one, just of how much of a grind it's been really since December 1st. I mean, they had the break, but December 1st to the 18th was crazy. Then they shut down and play one game in 20 days. And since then, it's every other night and then some.
It's been a grind, and up against good teams. Like they just played Boston, they just played St. Louis, they just played the Washington Capitals. Like there's
Penguins,
a lot of
the Hurricanes.
You could go on and on and on. So there's a lot of good teams here. And the thing is too, I know we've talked about it, but all these injuries, they cause a lot of guys to have to elevate their game. Like Eric Brandstrom, one of the most important investments that this team has. He hasn't really had a big chance to play big NHL minutes. He just hit a career high of 27 minutes the other night, 3 minutes more than his previous career high in ice time. So guys that are not quite ready to be put in positions are being forced to. And you know what? When you're a team like the Senators, you're not looking at playoffs here. Really, the key is development. So yes, it's tough that there's all these injuries, but it's giving guys an open door to have these opportunities and to have no excuses. Like Erik Brannstrom, you wanted time in the top 4. You wanted to quarterback a top power play. Well, here's your chance. And although the Senators, they may not be winning as many games as we would hope, they're not getting blown out either. Like you mentioned, we did a postcast. Check it out, Locked On Senators. We do it after every game. And you mentioned that the Sens are hardworking, and they really are. Sure, they're not going to out-talent a team like the New York Rangers, but they might outwork them.
And John, how about this? Like when you hear the Senators and you just look at them in the standings, they're like 26. And I mentioned just in passing, 1 win in November. You know how tough that is? 1 win in an entire month. They had they were the COVID guinea pigs, them and the New York Islanders, where how far can we go before we postpone games? And the Senators got to 11 players before they postponed a game out of the lineup. And at that point, like, you may as well be watching Belleville play in the minors at that point. But since we started the postcast on December 1st, they lost that game too, coming off their awful November. The Sens are 14, 11, and 4. That's an above 500 team, and they still have without their number one center. But he says opportunity. What does that do? It allows Tim Stutzle, who just played his 100th game on Saturday, to move over and play center. And things like that are what's making this season worthwhile long-term for the Senators. He would have been stuck on the wing. They really like the guys they had down the middle. If healthy, Shane Pinto and Colin White, 2 guys they had pegged in the middle. And then they go down, and then Josh Norris goes down. They're like, oh, frig, maybe we'll see what this kid can do there. And Stutzle's been a completely different player with the puck on his stick more through neutral ice. And it's given him the confidence. Saw a little dipsy doodle on Panarin there in the offensive zone. He wouldn't have done that 2 months ago. But you're starting to see this extra layer of confidence, and that's what this end of the season is all about. You've seen it with the Rangers. They just went through a rebuild. I'd say they're about a year and a half and a superstar away from where the Senators
is the big
are.
piece there. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, having a guy who only
and
wants
a Norris
to play
Trophy winning defenseman.
Yeah,
like,
who won't
actually,
play
there's
anywhere
a couple
else.
pieces.
Hey,
yeah.
what was your reaction? I laughed so hard when Adam Fox is like, oh, I always dreamed of playing for the Rangers. What do you think Flames and Hurricanes fans were thinking when they saw that quote? They're like, oh, yeah, we know. We tried really hard to make you play for us.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, man. He wound up there one way or the other. And it still blows my mind that this guy was traded twice before he ever played a single shift in the NHL. And even the Rangers, I mean, they only had to give up 2 second-round draft picks. I mean, they're high draft picks, sure, but I would do that 1,000 times.
They had all the leverage, right? Like, teams like Calgary and Carolina were like, we have you, please play for us. He's like, no,
I'm good.
I'm not gonna do it. So the New York Rangers know they've got a lot of leverage there, which must be nice to be a fan of a team with a lot of trade leverage. Wow, I'm jealous, John.
We are holding on to our very hope. Just like the Rangers got Panarin, he wanted to play in New York. Not a whole lot of people want to play in Ottawa, but there's a hometown kid who might end up on the Rangers. You said they wanted a right winger, but we have all our chips in that Claude Giroux will sign this offseason to come home and lead this team, hopefully. But of course, that's a bit of a pipe dream. But that's the kind of move that the Senators have to make this offseason to go to that next level. Otherwise, they're just going to be that young and scrappy team forever until they're not, right? You need that next step type player. And they've got the pieces in place. Like you saw Brady Tkachuk in the battle tonight. He's the perfect kind of leader for this team. You have some skill pieces, but they don't have that game breaker like Panarin, who gets 2 points tonight and the Rangers win 2-1. Like that, and Shesterkin, your goaltender, like that's the difference in this game.
Yeah, sooner or later, you need a guy like that can really kind of carry the team offensively when it needs to be carried offensively. And, you mentioned Giroux there. I think that could make some sense. As you mentioned, he's got some ties to the area. But, it's funny watching these games. And I said the same thing when the Rangers were playing the Red Wings the other night. Red Wings and Senators, 2 very young, rebuilding kind of teams. It almost feels like watching these games that the Rangers are like playing a version of themselves from like 2 years ago when they were the super young team. And they've got all these rookies. And, okay, who's going to play with who on what line? And, is this guy ready for the NHL? Does he need some season in the AHL? You're just kind of trying to figure it out. And, some guys are playing at the age of 20 when, should he be here? Should he be in the AHL? And a little trial by fire. And I think that's kind of what the Senators are going through right now, man. But if they stay the course, and as you guys were both saying, if they can add a big piece or two in the offseason, and we talked about this on your live stream too. I look at my standings board that I got over here, and I look at the 8 teams that aren't in the playoffs right now in the Eastern Conference. I feel like the Senators next year have as good or better of a chance of anybody of taking a playoff spot.
I'm interested to compare and contrast them to the Detroit Red Wings. Ottawa hasn't played them since 2020, since before the pandemic. Like, that's how long it's been. And they've got a back-to-back against them to start April. So that's a team that I love that comparison. You said they just played them. If you're the Rangers, like, I'm curious to see those two teams match up against one another.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting matchup for sure. I mean, the Rangers keep me busy enough, but honestly, if those two teams are playing each other, send me a message on Twitter. So I'm curious to see, how that one would go, because I definitely see some parallels between those two teams.
I want to ask you about one of my favorite prospects. Obviously, Pilsy and I dissected the 2020 draft about as deep as you can when Ottawa had 3 first-rounders, including 3rd and 5th. You know better than anyone, because not only did the Rangers have 1st overall, they had a couple later ones. This Braden Schneider kid, he's got to be an untouchable in trade talks, because that kid just looks like a steady Eddie defenseman back there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I can remember going into the draft that year, they're going to take Lafreniere number 1. And then you're looking at, who's going to be available, where were they, like 17th, 18th, something like that year?
Yeah, it was mid-teens.
They actually traded up, and they got 1 spot ahead of the Devils, who ended up taking a defenseman. Now, I don't know if they would have taken Schneider or not, but that's
Shakir Mukhamadullin, one of the funniest names in the draft.
There it is. I wasn't even going to try that.
But man, this kid's already playing games on a competitive team as a 20-year-old defenseman. Like, that's got to be saluted.
Yeah, and one of the things that I remember going into that draft is, there are players in this draft that have a higher ceiling than Braden Schneider, but he might have a safer floor than anybody. Like, the thing that I kept reading about him was that, there's no way that this guy shouldn't end up becoming like a top 4 defenseman on an NHL team at the very least. And, he's got that, he's big, he'll hit that old school, grit and snarl, whatever you want to call it.
All you have to say is he's from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I mean, that tells you just what he's about.
That's it, man. But I've been tremendously impressed, and he's got some offense to his game too. You saw he had the primary helper on the Strome goal early in that game, and that was Strome's first goal in I think 9 games is what they said. So yeah, man, I'm loving what I'm seeing from Braden Schneider. I think he's here to stay. He's never going back to the AHL. There's no way.
So who would be your guy to use in trade talks if it's not Braden Schneider, right? Zach Jones is right there. Niels Lundqvist as well. Like, there's Libor Hayek, I think probably has a little lesser value than those 3 guys. But you seem to be dealing from a position of strength if you're going to move a young defenseman to go get that forward.
I agree. I would also, he's not a defenseman, obviously, but I would throw Vitaly Kravtsov in there because him and the Rangers have had a chilly relationship. And I mean, I don't know if they can fix that, or, if the way he's acted has hurt his trade value. I'm sure it has, at least to some degree. But yeah, one of the young defensemen, I think Niels Lundqvist, maybe Zach Jones. I like Jones. I don't want to trade him. But again, you've only got 6 defenseman spots on any given night. Like, what are you going to do with all these guys?
I mean, right? Fox is pretty locked into one of them too, so make it 5.
I'd say so, yeah. He's got a future, that Adam Fox.
It might be all right.
Yeah, he might be all right.
I think so. Wait, while we're on defensemen, though, Ross mentioned a prospect he liked. I want to mention the guy I liked and both of us liked in this draft. How about Keandre Miller? I mean, that's a guy
stud.
When the Sens, they had a chance to get him, but
they were back.
They ended up, that was Lassie Thompson.
No,
correct?
They got JBD in that one.
Jacob Bernard-Docker. So we're happy with that.
Guest on Locked On Senators.
Yeah, but Keandre Miller, that's a guy we targeted, and we thought, wow, this guy plays Sens type hockey. We want to see him on our team. The Rangers get him instead. What can you tell us about him so far in his young career?
Yeah, I mean, he is another one of those guys. It goes back to what I was just talking about a second ago, where, the Rangers, especially a defenseman, but really throughout the lineup, a lot of trial by fire. A lot of guys just kind of thrown out there into the NHL. Are they ready? Or maybe they're not ready? Whatever. We're going to find out, kind of thing. And he hit the ground running last season as a rookie. It was a total surprise that he made the roster out of training camp. I believe he was only 19 or 20 at the time. And, I knew he was for real. There was a game early against the Penguins last season where Sidney Crosby had the puck behind the Ranger net. And, he's trying to shake Miller off of him. He's going this way. He's going that way. And Miller just stays with him the whole time. And then finally knocks him off the puck, takes the puck away, and skates away with it. And I was just like, all right, this kid's for real. But no, he's been great. He's got a heck of a shot that I kind of wish he would use a little bit more. And he's got some offense to his game as well. He'll play on the second power play unit. Fox has the top power play unit locked up. But, Yeah, no, I mean, I'm loving what I'm seeing from him so far. I don't think they would trade him, but again, if you want to get somebody significant, then it's possible that he could be on a list. I'm sure teams would like to have him, but yeah, I wouldn't be pushing to trade him anytime soon.